Dude. Dude, that's a knife right there, bro. And for me, when I'm in combat, when I'm up close, we call it up close and personal, I need a good grip, bro.
Close quarter combat, you need that stuff.
I got big hands, bro. I'm medium all the way around, although I got a dick on me, and we all know that. I'm such a loser that when my kid was born with a piece on him, and he's little. He came out 5 pounds, 7 ounces because he's, 5 weeks earlier or whatever. But I was like, is it me or has he got a dick? And in the middle of the operating room, I go, I gotta just say, and the OB, like she's a woman, she rolled her eyes and she goes, yes, I will admit it's pretty big, but leave it to a guy. You guys always say that. I'm like, well, it's the only. Intelligence, personality is important, but that's the most important.
Well, I'm just saying what everybody else is thinking. Like, let's just clear the air here.
Exactly. Fucking A.
You understand how genetics work. But
hey, I
heard it skips a generation, though, or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Maybe, but I still took full credit. Because, again, I'm a loser. You don't lose your insecurity. I was with my buddy who's made $1 billion. Like, whatever you think is a lot of money. He's made $1 billion. So that's $1,000 million. He's probably made more. And he's 56, and he said, it's important for us now to define as men, you got to wave goodbye. It's not about letting go. You got to wave goodbye to certain aspects of who you were. And you've got to embrace a new chapter in your life because there are certain limitations. Your body becomes more delicate. I'm supposed to run this Tough Mudder. My heel was like, no,
you're not doing that.
My heel was like, I quit. And I'm like, but my whole body, we're on lockdown. You can do push-ups, you can do pull-ups in your fucking garage. There's no walking today, and that's what happens. And nobody wants to hear that my tendons are inflamed. Like,
so true.
Right?
So
it is true, and it's
we're recording, right?
Yeah. Did you guys start?
Yeah, I think we've started.
Oh, okay, I was bouncing around.
No, we can do the. No, it's all good.
Well,
I think we
We
started
can get
already.
you a mic, dude.
Yeah, come jump in.
Whatever you want.
Come jump in.
I don't want to wreck the party, man.
I don't think you're gonna wreck it.
Just
I think
at
you're
least
gonna
have
add
the
to it.
mic next to you, and we can go from there. Go on. Yeah.
Can't remember what I was saying.
Talking about
Oh yeah, I feel the same way. Even just in the last year, I'm like, man, it's a little slower to recover.
Yeah.
Weight doesn't go away as quickly.
Yeah.
It goes on a little faster. This is weird. This is new territory.
But you have a fire beard, bro. You have a fucking Viking fire beard.
I used to have, this thing used to be like 6 inches long.
It should always be 6 inches at least.
It is at least 6 inches long. The beard, though, is a little different.
meant, hold on. What are we talking about?
I think that's how you started this thing, talking about your kid.
Well, is there anything else to talk about? Yeah.
That's pretty, so he came 5 weeks early.
Yeah, something like that.
Our first came 4 weeks early. 5 pounds, 4 ounces,
Yeah, there you
or
go.
whatever.
Yeah, so you went through the same thing.
Yeah, we didn't do the NICU thing, though.
No?
No, he had a little bit of jaundice because the liver or kidneys or whatever. They had to prick his foot like 5 times.
Check his Billy levels.
The bilirubin or whatever.
Fuck it is, yeah.
Yeah, so fortunately, he was pretty high on those levels, and then they said, he's fine.
They put him under a lamp or something.
It was like a briefcase tanning bed.
Yeah.
So we brought this thing home. Trish and I, my wife and I, traded off back and forth every night. Whether I sleep
my buddy said, "What do they do when what do they do when they didn't have this?" And I was like, "Babies died all the time.
Yeah,
and moms died all the time. That's what. Hey, shout out to fucking Western medicine, and microscopes and the scientific revolution. Everybody, shout out to that because we pay. I mean, look, say what you will about pharmaceutical companies, science pushes us far beyond our biology.
Well, think about that technology. You hear all these people complaining about the tyrannical patriarchy and how oppressed they are. And it's like, that's cute. Look at the phone, the supercomputer that you're crying on.
How about antibiotics? How about the pill?
Exactly.
How about the tampon? How about nuclear fusion that allows us? How about let's go through the technology that puts ammonia in nitrogen into soil that allows us to have food in the long winters.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the last person you know that starved to death? Anybody?
Right.
Who's the last person you know who died of diphtheria, mumps, measles? We can go on. Smallpox anyone? Polio anyone?
Right.
What the fuck are we talking about? The technology in your TV. Let me keep going. Concepts. You want to talk about? Did you say patriarchal? The tyrannical patriarchy.
Sure.
Cool. The concepts called racism, humanism, individualism, feminism, universal suffrage. We can just keep going. Last I checked, the intellectual architecture that went into the arguments that won that war of ideas, that beat bad ideas like slavery, and we still have to atone for that in our country, I understand.
Sure.
But those were all they all came out of, from last I checked, the Western male
Right, that patriarchy. Yeah.
Doesn't mean that women didn't have a huge to do with things. It doesn't mean that we will benefit greatly from including other people, of course. But the idea, the concept that one is of the same moral worth and has the same human potential regardless of your skin color or your gender came out of the Enlightenment,
Right.
And did you say tyrannical patriarchy?
Well, it's weird too to think.
So what the fuck are we talking about?
That to me, it's strange to even think that that's a fairly new concept in the history of
This was always in
human
the academic.
civilization.
This was in the academic fringes. Yeah. Oh, you mean that's right.
Just the fact that people are equal
Well,
is a fairly new concept.
It's so new. I can barely believe it. It's so new that, in fact, if you look at the great moral thinkers from Confucius to Jesus Christ to Socrates to Aristotle to Seneca, I mean, none of them spoke about the evils of slavery. None of them really spoke about the evils of a caste system, which existed, of course, in India, which existed, of course, in the great chain of being of England. No one ever spoke about it. That's what's fascinating.
You said something interesting though about the what'd you say? Slavery, the atone for slavery. We still have to atone for it. What do you mean by that?
Well, the United States has been a country with slavery longer than it has been a country without slavery.
Sure,
a lot of
right.
people don't realize that. So that is going to have its residue. That's going to have its ripple effect. That is an injustice that's always been inconsistent with the idea that all men are created equal. The founding fathers wrote about this. They knew about this. I mean, Jefferson and George Washington freed all his slaves. I mean, they obsessed and recognized, of course, the blinding inconsistency, the sort of, I mean, it was so crazy that they knew that the abolitionist movement and the idea that slavery was this institution you couldn't defend along the lines that you had established this country on was something they were going to have to reckon with, and they didn't know what to do about it. So I think we're still dealing with that in a sense. What I object to is the far left's refusal. The far left's I have a huge problem with the far left across the board, but their refusal to acknowledge that culture, that beliefs, that practices, that behaviors personal behaviors don't play a role in whether or not you succeed or you fail in the 21st century. This is not rocket science. And if you don't want to read white scholars on this, please read Thomas Sowell.
Right.
Or and we can keep going on
But do you attribute
Shelby
it to
Steele and things?
Do you attribute it to ignorance or malicious intent?
Ideology.
But it's hard for me. You said it yourself. Like it's hard to believe that people actually think that meritocracy, for example, isn't something that's going to drive progress and innovation and growth for everybody, not just the top tier.
We live in a meritocracy. So I'm a comic. I'm an actor.
Right.
I either get the job or I don't. There's no second place.
Sure.
I either put butts in the seat or I don't. I either write jokes that people laugh at or I don't. For whatever it's worth, I did sports growing up. You either win that wrestling match or you fucking lose that wrestling match.
Right.
You know, you either make a business work or you don't. You live that way. We're doing a podcast right now. You want to get listeners. It's important. So you've got to think about the questions you're going to ask. We are dealing with a group of people, academics in our higher institutions of learning, that have never, ever had to live in that world. They came from wealth. They live in an elite institution behind very protective walls. And the humanities, whether they're economics or psychology or literature or God forbid, all these tributary academic fields, which aren't academic fields like gender studies, etc., are you know, the anybody who had any kind of a conservative mindset was pushed out. So there was zero pushback. So what happens is the echo chamber keeps getting more and more pure. And just like with everything, when you have that kind of incest, when you have that kind of incestual relationship, it becomes a snake eating its own tail. And you develop, I think retarded is the wrong word right now. That's not allowed anymore, but you do. You
stunt, you
there
hinder.
becomes an arrested development.
Sure.
These people are not smart. I have spoken to those academics. They are so myopic. I used this analogy the other day. It's like when you want to learn about health, okay? If you want to learn how to eat and be vibrant and optimal in your physicality, if you want to be strong, have a lot of endurance, you know, increase your foot or hand speed, be pain-free, feel vibrant, have a hard-on whenever, you know, whatever it might be. You don't go to an eye specialist.
Right.
You don't go to a guy who specializes in bladder cancer. That person is specific on that. They took nutrition way back when, bro. You don't go to an orthopedic surgeon who works just on shoulders. That guy's the best at shoulders. But you start asking him questions about health and diet, he's going to go, where'd you read that? Because that's not his area of focus. So I'm not going to that guy to ask about how to be healthy. I'm going to that guy when I got a bad fucking shoulder. And academia has become the same thing. You are I'm going to borrow a metaphor from, I can't remember the academic's name, but you are at the bottom of a well and all you can see is your sliver of the sky. Okay? You don't see the whole sky, you fucking dummy. But you're indoctrinating kids into your own indoctrination.
But it's so weird because an academic, you would think, is going to, yes, I can see the echo chamber that you're talking about.
Yeah.
But also an academic should be, at least, studying other texts, studying other ways of doing things, studying history and seeing that, oh, what I'm engaged in doesn't work. It's proven not to work at this point.
Well, I can give you a better, I can give you a better analogy of what I think an academic's job is.
Okay.
I don't think an academic's job is to teach you what to think. I think an academic's job is to teach you how to think. And the great teachers do that.
Should be, is what you're saying.
Yes, but we don't have academics teaching kids now. We have ideologues, we have activists, we have people who have no idea how to think. They haven't been taught how to think. Somehow they got tenure because they check a box,
right?
Which I think is the enemy of everything. And
what's the enemy of everything?
When equity, the idea of so putting equality of outcome over equality of opportunity.
Because then you have to manipulate the input in order to achieve the objective.
Yeah, but how are we talking about this now? How the fuck is this news? Why are these bad ideas? How have they been repackaged? They are the enemy. If you want to find the enemy, and I sound like when they killed Socrates, they accused him of corrupting the youth of Athens. Well, I guess I might be part of that fucking group because they are the enemy. The academics, the people that created these. Look, Jordan Peterson's way better about this than I am, but I've spoken to them. I interviewed 400 academics at least on my old podcast, maybe more. I'm telling you that they are quite simply the biggest activists. They're just so far left, and I consider them to be the enemy. I think if you want to change, I think the biggest problem in this country is that we are being taught ideologies that have already been proven to be wrong, that have no standing. This is where this anti-racist. See, what I do is I read all my enemies. I've read Ibram Kendi. I've read that terrible, that horseshit human being, Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility. She sucks. She's such a zero. Like, she's such an anti-academic. It's hilarious to me. And then I've read the critics. See, I'm an actor. I'm a comedian. I've read all the crits. I've read Richard Delgado. I've read Derek Bell. I've read Penelope Crenshaw, Kimberly Crenshaw. I've read them. I took my time to really try to see, and And I will say, from a scholarly point of view, critical race theory has its merits. It does. There's what they do is they bring up really cool, interesting ideas. What a crit will say, a critical race theorist will say is look, a black woman trying to raise 2 kids without a father in a certain a demographic, like in the ghetto or wherever it might be, or in an underprivileged area, has very different concerns than a black man working in a civil rights office in the same neighborhood who's trying to get voting legislation passed.
Sure, right.
She doesn't have time for that right now, bro. She's got to have somebody to take care of her kids because she's holding down 2 fucking jobs.
Yeah.
So when she goes over there, they tell her to stuff envelopes. And she's saying, I'm stuffing envelopes, bro, but I got my kids. I need somebody to take care. I don't have daycare for my kids. She has very real problems, right? So that's where the critical race theorists have a contribution. They're looking at the very so when you walk by a homeless person and your buddy calls him a hobo and you say, dude, hey, I got to check you. He's homeless. He's unhoused. Cool, dude. Did that do anything to change his fucking life?
Yeah, no.
No, of course it didn't.
No,
So
right.
the crits, that would be critical. That's an example of the kind of work that critical race theorists do. So I'm not against scholarship in any field. I'm not. It's fine. I'm not against that. What I have a problem with is when that becomes dogma, truth with a capital T, the only thing. The 1619 Project with Hannah Jones, whatever her name is.
Hannah Jones.
Yeah, I love that you know these names, by the way. I appreciate that because you've done your work.
Well,
then.
it's important. You got,
Yes.
like you said, you got to understand what everybody's saying.
Slavery was an integral part of this country, but so was innovation. So was the Constitution. So was the idea that you could make a lot of money off your own individual initiative. I mean, come on now. Let's not say it's only the story of slavery. There's a lot of stories.
Right. There's a lot more to it than just slavery.
Yeah, and so
Sure.
what happens with these people is they become specialists, and all they can see is their tiny sliver of the world. It's an example of what I'm saying. So, but they right now have undue power, but you can't apply this shit at the level of detail. How do you run a society like this? We're already seeing what's happening. People are going, you can't have a 6'4" dude who's now deciding they're a woman smashing all the female
swimming records.
Go fuck yourself.
Right.
Go fuck yourself.
Well, you know what's interesting about
No.
that? I've been thinking on that one a little bit. You know, the inevitable outcome. Frankly, women need to stand up for this and against this, because what the only solution, if we're going to assign it based on gender and not sex, is do away with sex distinct competition.
No,
And then
dude,
all the women are going to be out.
again, it goes back to how you think versus what you think. You can't be selective. What is the philosophy behind it? If you say I can be transsexual and I can identify as a woman and then apply that to everyday life like competition, then you know what? I also identify as an Asian 12-year-old. I'm not 54. I want to be 12. That's how I feel. I feel 12. I feel 30 sometimes. I'm 30. You understand?
Yeah. Oh, I get it.
So
Well, and I think culture is a little bit more malleable anyways. Asia, what does that mean? Well, that might have actually been societally constructed, right? Geographic, sure, but borders are just societies that have fought and battled and everything else.
Yeah.
That's more of a societal construct than biology,
course it
sex, gender.
but see,
I can understand that one more than I can understand sex.
what I like about what you're saying, though, is that it's forcing all of us reasonable people to formulate and articulate and give form to our philosophy, to our pushback.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of pushback. And I think what's happening already is that far left insanity is such a political liability. They're going to get slaughtered.
Yeah.
But also, it's really easy to make fun of. It's fucking so easy to
It
make
gives
fun
you a
of.
lot of material.
They're so fucking stupid. They're so dumb that it's so much fun to make fun of. Like, they just live in their fucking... Some of them are in big tech and they're not doing well. And they're not happy. They're just not, man.
I think the problem is that decent, rational people don't have time for the bullshit. They don't have the mental capacity. Not that they don't have the capacity. They don't have the mental desire to focus any amount of time on that. And so they're quiet. And then the left banks on that
Well-
everybody's going to be quiet. And then guys like you who challenge the status quo, who are well-researched, who are willing to make fun of things, which I think is a hugely important thing in society, are silenced and canceled and all this other stuff.
Oh yeah. I was told that was going to happen, but that's okay, because I'm an American and I'm proud. I'm a patriot, and I know I don't take for granted for 1 second what the founding fathers gave us, which was they created a system that did not allow the concentration of power to pool in any one group's hands.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the Bill of Rights. It's the fact that we have a bicameral legislature. It's the fact that we have these different branches of government that are always grading against each other. Government is supposed to move slowly. Government, you're supposed to supposed to gripe about how little power you have
Right.
as a president.
Nothing ever gets done.
You're supposed to gripe
That's
about
a
that.
feature.
That is
not a bug.
That was the great genius of James Madison and Thomas Jefferson and John Jay and Alexander Hamilton. They've solved the political problem that way, and the list goes on.
I think the problem even with that, though, is that let's take executive orders, for example. Whatever party is in control wields that stuff as if it's a good thing. Well, executive authority,
Always.
that's a great thing.
Yeah.
Well, until you're on the wrong side of the equation.
Of course, they want to get rid of the filibuster. They don't want to get rid of the filibuster.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's always going to happen. But I was going to address what you were saying also about the everyday person. There are two things going on. For us, we're all trying to construct a life. Constructing a life is difficult. Like, it takes time, man.
Sure.
Building a business.
Yeah.
Building your body, building a skill, getting a black belt in jiu-jitsu. We're all trying to build something here. And we also pay a price for being wrong. All of us pay a price for being wrong. But Douglas Murray, I think it was, who wrote The Madness of Crowds, and Nassim Taleb, who wrote Anti-Fragile, but he also wrote Skin in the Game.
Yeah.
Talked about how, these people don't pay a price for being wrong. They're not paying a price for being wrong. And
Well, they're rewarded.
they are deconstructing. They are deconstructionists. When you're an academic, you get to sit on the outside, and for that matter, even as a journalist nowadays, and because you make money deconstructing, you make money just pontificating, using your face to make your living and not paying a price for when you're wrong.
Well, but
and
it's
the
not
same
only
thing
not
with
paying
economists like Paul Krugman, etc.
It's not even just not
Fuck
paying a
that guy.
price. You're actually rewarded for that.
To the tune of tens of millions of dollars, sir. Yeah.
I mean, you that's what I'm saying. Like, you see these people, they make up the dumbest things, they lie about things, and then they're rewarded, whether it's financial incentive or notoriety or a few more clicks or some social media followers, or a few more applauds or whatever. They're rewarded for doing it, and so they're incentivized to continue down that path.
Yes. And I also think the other thing is that we tend, and we're doing it too, but anybody woke listening to us would say they're just two straight white guys, and
Right.
they're but I'm not. That is such a cop out. Like, meet me with my arguments. Answer my questions. Answer my questions. What do you honestly have a problem with? And have you compared us to other countries? I lived in these other countries. Have you taken stock of what you have gained and what you get from this wonderful country?
The problem is the false dichotomies that we live in, right? So if one thing is wrong, everything's wrong. And if you dare, like, for example, I'll have people listen to this podcast and they'll say, well, you should have talked about all these other things. It's like, well, we were together for like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
I couldn't possibly address every scenario that humankind has ever dealt with.
Right.
But people think that this podcast is specifically for them, that the world revolves around them, and that if I say something that they disagree with, then I have an issue with that individual specifically.
Yeah, Rogan and I used to always talk about this because I've known him since I was a young man, and we used to shout. We'd get in arguments, and it'd just be two dudes shouting our points of view, and then fucking get uncomfortable. And now what we realized was that these are just ideas, man.
Right.
And we're just putting them on the table. And they might get beat by a better idea. But these are just ideas.
You have to share them to be able to find something that would beat it.
Yeah, as a guy who always called himself a libertarian, I read Michael Lewis's book, The Fifth Risk, about all the things government does. And you know what I realized? I don't know what the fuck I'm talking. I don't know a thing about government. And I have no, again, and a shout out to people who are, who are working the government. I had no idea how much I benefit from government, from the Department of Energy, from the Department of Agriculture.
Transportation.
I had no fucking idea. I'm sitting there going, and I believe in small government. Well, Bryan, you don't know what the fuck, you don't know anything about the government, first of all, and I don't. I read one book, and that was all it took to make me realize, oh, I'm a fucking idiot, which I am. So I don't have the answers, but at least now I can be like, I'm an idiot. There's a lot of shit I don't know. And I didn't know that they shoots firecrackers off to make sure geese don't fly into your fucking engine. Department of Agriculture. Didn't know that. You know who gets food? You know who manages all the food banks and gets food to people who can't walk in the wintertime and have no money and are in isolated areas? Department of Agriculture. Do you know who gave low interest loans and made Tesla possible, a car I drive? Department of Energy. Do you know who created, things like gene therapy that saved my friend's life? Gene therapy, cancer stuff. I believe it was Department of Energy with a low interest loan at ARPA, or it was DARPA. It was DARPA. It was actually DARPA. So Department of Energy. Yeah. GPS, you ever use that? Sure. I do. Yeah, that'd be DARPA. Yeah. Okay. Kevlar, that'd be DARPA. Internet, you ever heard of the internet? That was a program at DARPA. So I should shut the fuck up. The scientists studying how to get sheep to graze at higher altitudes as the globe warms. You can believe in global warming or not, but I don't know how to do that. They do. They're not political. They're just scientists going, I don't know what the fuck you guys are talking about, but the globe right now is warming from my perspective, and I got to get sheep to graze because we can't grow the kind of grass they like here. So if you like mutton... Hey, Bryan Callen, if you like fucking mutton, which I do, which I just show up and I'm like, you don't have the fucking mutton? This is bullshit. Well, there are scientists in the government figuring this shit out. So it was very humbling.
Well, I mean, I think, we're obviously very ignorant to this stuff.
Yeah,
right? But people will read a book and they're like, oh no, I get it now. It's like I stayed at a Motel 6 one night, and so you think you're a brain surgeon, right? That's the problem.
But but I do believe it's important to keep changing your mind. It's important to keep listening to each other. It's important to read the people you disagree with, like I have tried to do with critical race theory, with Ibram Kendi, who's the biggest lightweight in the world. But I like Ibram Kendi because it's a confessional, and he's always changing his mind. I think the strength of Ibram Kendi, who wrote How to Be an Anti-Racist, is the fact that this dude is so honest about how he continues to change his mind, how wrong he is and how wrong he might be. I think you might see Ibram Kendi, and if in 20 years, you might see him come out and say, this is all bullshit, I've changed my mind. That is his strength.
Interesting.
I think he's very wrong, but right now, but Then you have the ideologues like Robin DiAngelo, who's the biggest fucking zero. Did I mention that? Fuck that book. God, it's so embarrassing.
I think the problem is it's hard. Well, I think, here, I'll say it this way. What we ought to be doing is also examining motives. So you're talking about the Department of Agriculture, for example, and you're saying, these guys aren't politically driven. Well, maybe, but there are people who are going to use them as political pawns. And I think what we need to do a better job of asking is not only what is happening, but why is it happening? For example, with COVID. Okay, here's what's happening: restrictions, lockdowns, vaccines, this and that. Why? Why is it happening the way it's happening? What are the motives of the people who are instituting these mandates, for example? Because I think we're going to get closer to the truth if we determine what motives are.
Well,
because you can take...
There's so much money in...
Well, and that's what I'm saying.
I mean...
Right? You can take one scenario and the motive is going to completely alter the way that thing is instituted.
It scares the shit out of me when they can get that many of us to force that many of us to wear masks and vaccine mandates. I am pro-vaccine in general. I think vaccines are great for the most part. I get very suspicious when you want children to be vaccinated and Pfizer has 37 billion doses and you're making that much money. Rogan's done such a service with having this guy Abrams and Malone and all these
guys. Yeah.
I mean, to hear these scientists, these insiders, these people who developed the vaccine, come out and say, hold on, guys, hold it. I'm listening. All I know is I'm listening. I'm listening now. Now I'm going, but these guys know so much more and I know nothing. And they're not anti-vaxxers. They're not. But, do masks work? Again, it goes back to, are you going to give a government bureaucrat like Fauci that much power?
Yes, apparently, yes.
Yeah, it goes back to not letting power concentrate in one person's hands. We just know that human beings are fallible. One of the things, I'm not a Christian, but one of the things I think is interesting about the Bible is that the Apostle Paul, who wrote most of the New Testament, letter to Corinthians and all that, said, beware of using your own logic to get yourself out of the predicament of the problem of being a human being. Faith has this really interesting sort of doorway, this escape hatch, because I've read a lot of philosophy, and every time I fucking go down the philosophy rabbit hole and I listen to lectures and stuff, boy, do I find myself sort of in a circle. Nietzsche was, he's such a seductive guy, but everybody I read who was a philosopher, I don't know how happy they were.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And then you get Paul who says, hey guys, all this fucking religion is great, but don't forget about love. At the end of the day, it might just be about love. And it's like, what? That's emotional, but it's true. It's like, how do you justify, how do you say when you say something like all human life is sacred? Well, is a vegetable in a bed that's never going to come out of a coma sacred? That's a lot of resources we're spending on that human being. But we do. We do. And the reason we do is because somewhere along the line, we ingested the idea that we are all of the same moral worth, regardless of your physicality, regardless of what you look like. So you have to, if you defend someone who identifies as gay or whatever it might be, or as a woman, you have to also protect that vegetable, that invalid, that profoundly retarded human being who can't feed themselves. Again, it goes back to, you can't pick and choose, man. You have to have absolutes. That doesn't come from philosophy. That doesn't come from rationality. That doesn't come from math. It doesn't. I'm sorry, Sam Harris. I'm sorry. It doesn't come from just rationality. You can rationalize your way into murdering a lot of people that drain resources on bad criminals, people who can't, take care of themselves, total invalids who have people who are brain dead. You can do that, and we have done that in the past in history. Well,
even the abortion conversation is a great example of that.
The way out of that, we all benefit a great deal. From the idea that we're all of the same moral worth, that human life is sacred. That's the argument.
So you're saying morality is absolute then?
No, I'm not willing to die on that hill. I that scares me. But yeah. But I mean, as an individual, don't you have to live that way?
I believe that. It's just hard for me to defend it personally.
Well, it's always hard to defend. That's why doubt. That's why when you have faith, it always comes with what's called doubt. Look, I mean, so does philosophy. I remember anytime you read any philosopher, please have a semicolon. And the semicolon after everything you've read should be, but how can we be sure of that?
Well, I think the best litmus test is, does it serve people? Like, is it, or even this is more simple, but I don't know if this is totally accurate, but is it right? But then again, that comes to morality being objective, that it's just, it is what it is. Is it right?
But you can draw these absolutes. And let me tell you how. Take a look at what the Enlightenment take a look at what the West has given us, from the Constitution to the Bill of Rights to equality at all costs to feminism, individualism, to the technology that pushes
capitalism,
us way beyond all of that.
Sure, yeah.
Take a look at what that does. Isn't it true? But also look at the artistic expression so when you have a society that protects its gentler spirits, that allows you, even though you don't represent a type of strength you can measure, the Roman or Spartan measure of strength, broad chest, hurling a spear really far, holding your shield, lifting your shield in unison with the phalanx. You know, this is strength. And everyone else bow before me. We have slaves, we have women, we have children. I will take your women and children, etc. Actually, the societies that measure strength in many ways, in the arts, in the dead languages of Latin and Greek. I mean, not Greek, but you know, in the dead Latin language of Latin, in painting, in fashion, and all the people that belong to fashion, our gender fluid people that create the goodies and create color in our world, who understand texture, fabric. They understand, they can say that wall of roses might be a little too aggressive in this space. Shit that you and I be like, huh?
Yeah, sure.
Thank God for those people, because what it creates is art. And that's the cornerstone of our culture. And it's what we stay alive for. If you have just one idea of strength, which is this knife and steel,
hard and
strong
steel,
four-legged dogs with a good bite, and great and guns that don't jam, and the stock market in the NFL, you may no longer be interesting as a culture. Man, you want to be interesting. The Sistine Chapel took a long time to paint, and he went blind doing it because the paint kept falling in his eyes. Fuck, that's way more interesting.
Or even what's worth protecting at that point.
Yes, when they designed Florence, at least the legend goes, the Pope and the King and walked around with an architect and just said, how far away should people be from each other as they walk by each other in the street? Let's take that into account. I want to see what that's like. I want people to feel connected. Let's design the streets just so. Let's measure that human interaction. Fuck, dude. It's not about flow. It's not about efficiency. It's not even about abundance. It's about human connection. And so now when we go to Florence, man, we walk around and our jaws drop. We're like, it's one of the jewels of the world. Those were not, the consideration that went into those places was not weaponry. It was human connection. It was that we are a community.
Well, I think part of the challenge is that the different, we'll just call it classes for lack of a better term, whether it's the artistic class or the warrior class.
Yeah.
They don't understand each other, so they think each other is wrong, right? So a warrior might think an artist is wrong. But similarly, an artist might think, well, not everybody needs to be a warrior.
Yeah.
Well, you're right. Not everybody does. To your point, we need all of the different components to create a thriving society.
Herodotus had a comment on that. And he said that, in fact, art and the artist class and the warrior class oftentimes do mesh. Men go to war. Freud said men go to war over hatred. And Herodotus might have said men don't go to war because they hate. They go to war because they love. They love their way of life.
Their families.
They want to defend their country. They want to defend. And the way you do that is you get them to march under what? Propaganda, banners, flags, sayings,
uniforms,
a mythical history of what your country was and could be again. Those are what? Artistic stories. Sure. There is the narration. C.S. Lewis, when he wrote Mere Christianity, those were everybody should read that. Those were essays that he would read on the radio for the Royal Air Force in Britain. And those guys died, I'm telling you, 1 in 4 at least. 1 in 4. Those were young men that knew they were going to die. It was a matter of time. You flew your sorties and you knew you were going to die. And he was reading those on the radio to keep them fucking going, man. To keep them going. So never underestimate the power of story. There's a book called
poetry, right?
There's a book called The Nobility of Failure that I read as a young man, and it was the kamikaze. The kamikaze in Japanese means divine wind, and most of the kamikaze were not engineering students or math students. Almost all of them who volunteered to be kamikaze were students of poetry, literature, and things like that. And I read this, a beautiful book, and they wrote letters home to their parents, And all of them were in haiku. And dude, like you read it and you're like, you motherfuckers are dying, and you're dying with your eyes open, and you have a romantic notion of what you're defending. And it was the kamikaze primarily were young romantic men. They were not, they may have been fanatics, but they weren't these hardcore. You think of Navy SEALs or Delta guys, you know those guys?
Robotic type,
No,
warrior, just
and
grind through it.
Just fucking Spartans, like dudes who fucking, they're just made for war. Not so with the kamikaze.
Well, I think the same thing about, this is going to sound strange. It sounds strange in my head as I'm thinking about it. Even Islamic terrorists. Like, how do you convince, how is a young man so convinced of what he's about to do?
You create a medieval version of Islam. We have to bring us back to the caliphate. Yeah. Under when Muhammad was in Medina and Mecca, all was right in the world. That's how you do it. They shave, they bathe in rose water. There's a whole ritual. They read the verses. They're going to heaven. All that stuff, right? They're defending jihad, right, with a capital J. All that stuff. You know, jihad. The root in Arabic is struggle. It was the same idea of the struggle between the flesh and the spirit that Christianity has, but
yeah, fighting that. I would call it fighting that natural man.
Nice body, dude. Nice body, man. We got a lot of good beards in here. A lot of good beards in here.
You were talking about art, so I just figured.
I get it. Yeah, I hijacked this podcast. I hope we're.
I'm engaged, man. I'm just listening.
I don't know if you had questions.
No, I came here prepared to have a conversation about this and that and wherever it went. So I'm glad it's going this way.
Good, I appreciate that.
When you talk about just to rewind a little bit, you talk about these ideologues and specifically the way that people are not taught how to think. What is the solution to that? Is it conversations like this? Is it?
Yes.
I mean, how do you do this on a mass scale though? Because I think
you have to fail. These are cycles that go on. And I think what happens is you start to realize the far left, the woke that I rail against, there's nothing to fight against sometimes. They don't have consistency. They don't have a bedrock that you can anchor into. They don't. There's no bedrock there.
What would be an example of that?
Okay. You have to shut up and listen. Okay, cool. Why are you so quiet? Silence is violence. Wait, words are violence. Violence is violence. What do I follow here? What am I supposed to do here?
Well, that's a tactic,
I identify
right?
as a woman. I identify as a woman. So therefore, as a man, I have a beard, but I identify as a woman, and I'm going to go and smash every woman's powerlifting record that there ever was, swimming record or whatever. Now feminists who've worked so hard to get reproductive rights and equal rights and all that stuff, all of a sudden go, wait a minute, these are white men who are dressing up as women right now, and they're not even doing hormone therapy, or maybe they're saying they are, but they're saying they identify. So the T is grading against the F, so there's no way to have cohesion here. There's no way to actually figure out a way to galvanize a philosophy that cuts all the way across. So when you talk, here's another example, identity politics. Okay, so if we're going to separate people, if we're going to take white males and put them in the dominant hierarchy box, the center of culture, okay, and they've always been, the culture has organized itself around white supremacy. Okay, fine. Now what we're going to do though is we're going to give other groups more say by actually shoehorning them into the equation. Okay. Well, now what you have to do though is you have to represent all groups. All right. So you have to represent, let's start with black men, but then we have to have black women.
Equally.
Well, you have black women arguably have had even a harder time than black men, you could say. But then let's have Asian. What about Asians? And then we have to break down Asians. The ethnic Chinese have done very well. What about the Filipinos? What about the Vietnamese? What about where do we put Pacific Islanders? They've had a hard time of it. Okay, we got to keep going though. Let's go with Latin now. We have the Spanish is very different, of course, than Mexican, which might be different than Cuban. Everybody has their own experience, but that does nothing. We have the next tier, which is women, But then we have to have Middle Eastern women. But then we also have to have, what do we do with Middle Eastern women, or what do we do with a Pacific Islander woman who's also handicapped? What if she's deaf? What if I'm a white guy with crippling anxiety and terrible agoraphobia? What do we do with that guy? Because he's a white straight male. But what do we do with a white straight male who's a dwarf, who has dwarfism? I mean, he can't reach most of the world. What do we do about that person? And what if he's also deaf?
But how do you take all these victim classes?
I'll tell you,
and put them in a hierarchy.
The West said you can't. What did the West say? The West said you can't do that. The way out of that is you treat everybody as equals. An individual.
Right.
No, individual.
Oh, got it. Sure, yeah.
If you can keep categorizing people. Black women, how about black women with allergies?
Right.
How about black women with allergies and lupus? How about black women with allergies, lupus, not attractive, in their mid-50s, who also suffer from... We can just keep going.
Sure, it's infinite.
So whenever you have this intersectionalist, it's called the intersectionalist. So the intersectionalist feminist, okay? That's where it is. This is the critical race theory argument, okay? It's white women may have had it harder than white men, but black women have had it way harder. Mm-hmm. And black gay women have had it even harder. And black gay women who aren't attractive, who have a chronic condition, have had it even harder. When are we going to stop? The problem is that you will keep breaking up into all different groups, so much so that you end up once again with the individual. We've gone through this. We've gone through this. That's why when I talk about these crits and I talk about these academics who are writing these books, they just haven't done their reading. They haven't exposed themselves to the original thinkers. They're just embarrassing. It's embarrassing. I'm a fucking comic. Why do I know this? Seriously. I don't have time to read this stuff. Why do I know this? Honestly, it's embarrassing, man.
Well, to go back to what you said earlier about slavery and the history of America and our atonement for it, I think, when somebody hears that, they might think, well, okay, atone, reparations, right? We got to fix it. But I don't know that that's the solution either, because what did I do to alienate individually, what did I do to alienate a slave from 200 years ago?
Yeah, that's the argument with reparations. But the other question the other inconvenient question is you have to get around. Blacks started doing very well directly after Reconstruction, right before Jim Crow, and then blacks were doing very well in the 20s in comparison economically, and in the 50s economically. It wasn't until the 60s. Thomas Sowell does a very good job of sort of showing the genealogy of this. The breakup of the black family was devastating. We never talk about that. Now that people, Charles Murray has written a book called Losing Ground and blames sort of the liberal establishment's entire welfare programs, where it became cheap. It became more
incentivized to.
Yeah, because
sure.
You made more money if there wasn't a man in the house.
And there was a child without a father and these
right.
sorts of things.
That's right. Now, that's probably true. I don't know that serves the argument. What I do think is that we know, let's just say this, we know from almost all metrics that a single parent household, primarily a woman raising children without a father, the child has 15 fucking reasons to fail. Mm-hmm. I mean, statistically.
Yeah, or more. You're right.
I mean, it's crazy. Can we agree on that? And can we agree that cultures that put family cohesion above anything else do better? And maybe that's one of the larger reasons why the ethnic Chinese, for that matter, let's take, if we want to do skin color, Nigerians, the Igbo of right. Nigeria, do so well.
They do well here.
Very well.
Absolutely.
Highly
the
educated.
Best per capita, financially per capita.
More than the Yoruba, more than the Hausa of Nigeria. Don't worry about my accent. Yoruba, Hausa. But why? You have to take these things into account. Why doesn't the left ever talk about that? What I like is more and more, I listen to a lot of black on black debate between liberal blacks and woke blacks and conservative blacks. I love doing it because it's important. It's important. And there's a real intellectual renaissance going on in the black community where they're all asking these questions. They're going, what the fuck is going on? What's wrong?
Right.
This Democrat socialist left narrative hasn't served us we've been voting for these motherfuckers forever. Look at the blue states. Look at California. There's no Republicans in the way. Portland, Washington, Oregon, Washington. There are no Republicans in the way. These are Democratic supermajorities.
Look at the result.
How's inequality doing? How's that homeless situation?
Right, exactly.
What the fuck are we talking about? How is that? How is your regressive tax policy? How is your multi-unit family housing construction going? Not in my backyard, right? You fucking liberals who are always talking about, equality. So we're starting to see this. New York State, are the Republicans all over the place? Right. Is there a Republican in New York? Is there? I don't know. How's Albany and all those states doing?
I've been there. The problem is
disaster.
That people think it's the government's job to fix their problems, and it's not. What ends up happening is they come in and they say they're going to fix the problems, and they might put a Band-Aid on something at the expense of something else.
But see, it's not. But when you say government, what we do is we trigger people, right? So let's. What you just said is something I agree with. But government actually it serves its function?
Sure.
Yes. But I think a better way to say it is that sometimes large bureaucracies, top-down management isn't the most effective. Sometimes you want localized governance. That's really what we're talking about.
Actually, what I think has to happen. So here's what people will say when I say it's not the government's job to solve problems. Well, what about poor people? What about those with mental illness? Right. It's the individual, the community's job, not the government. It's my job to take care of my neighbor who can't mow their lawn or can't make their mortgage payment. But we've done away with a lot of these institutions, like church, for example. Programs for young boys, like Boy Scouts of America used to be a great program. And we've done away with those communities that take care of their own.
Yeah.
And instead, mommy and daddy government have come in and said, well, don't worry about those church institutions, after-school programs, community membership. Nah, we'll take care of everything.
Well, now you're talking about a fixed point of truth, and so when one of the things about Christianity was it focused, this is not my idea, but this is Christianity, when Europe was a Christian nation, this was a Christian country.
Sure.
I'm not a Christian, but when I say this, what the advantage of that was that it had its disadvantages, but it had its advantages. Its advantages was it focused the mind. It focused the collective American and European mind. There wasn't really any debate about what was right and wrong. There wasn't debate about how to governance and stuff like that. That's really helpful when you're moving a country forward in the industrial age, And I think that when Nietzsche said, and he died in 1900, so when Nietzsche said, God is dead, what he was talking about was that he was looking at the thought that sprung from the Enlightenment. He was looking at, and I'll break it down. You had Einstein who said time and space are relative. Time is relative. Now think about this. It used to be that there was Newtonian time, that God set a stopwatch and there was an alpha and an omega. There was a beginning and end to time. And that, there was we started way back then. But Einstein comes along and proves with his mathematics that time is relative. It all depends on how fast you're going. Well, that's nuts. And then you had people predicting, and not only did he do that, he predicted not only that light bends, but he and Haley and different people predicted the movement of the planets.
Right.
It's real hard to argue with somebody who says, "Hey, bro, you're going to see a comet if you look up in 2, 3
now."
And you go, "Oh fuck, that's math. I can't
like
argue."
A wizard now.
And Copernicus, who proves, or Galileo, the Copernican revolution. Oh, the sun. The Earth actually revolves around the sun. I'm sorry. And then you have Freud who comes along and says, hey guys, this is going to sound weird, but there's something called the conscious mind, the unconscious mind, and the subconscious mind. You have a part of your brain you're not even aware of, and that part of your brain wants to fuck your mom. Your mom. Huh? And then a guy named Darwin comes along and goes, hey, life is brutish and short, and it is about the survival of the fittest, but I got one even better for you. It's about sexual selection. So at the end of the day, we all want to fuck, and chicks choose the guy who has the most aggression with the broadest shoulders and who can kill the other males, etc., etc. So all of a sudden, all our morality, all our notion of time, all our notion of how we think goes out the fucking window. All of it. And then you have Stravinsky's The Rites of Spring. Play Rites of Spring for a second. Right. So Picasso comes along with his deconstructionist period. Dali comes along with those clocks that are bent.
Melted.
Okay.
Yep.
So Picasso is painting women in cubes, and so everybody in the world is going, "Hey, man, Aristotle and the Bible are wrong." Like these motherfuckers they were calling Freud a Jew, a Jewish scientist, his Dada science. It was a disaster for the European and American paradigms, the European paradigm of thought. Listen, put on Rites of Spring. Yeah. This is not a good example. Give me another song.
You want the hook?
I want another song of it, yeah. Because I want you to hear this for a sec. Go ahead.
Just a different part.
Yeah. Yeah, listen. Turn this up. This is modern art. Nobody was playing this music. This is 1900. This is nuts. This was the mood music. This was the mood music. This guy named Professor Buchholz said this is the mood music. Totally deconstructed music. Sharp F's all over the place. Nobody was doing this. All music was la 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 la,
right.
na 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 na. I could predict where we were going. Try predicting where this is going.
Yeah.
Try. That was the mood music that turned Europe into a slaughterhouse. That was the mood music for World War I. Technology that came out of nowhere, it's called the machine gun and nerve gas, that killed so many people, and the entire idea of how to fight with chivalry, with a feather in your fucking hat and charging was the biggest fucking liability in the world. Men went down by 60,000 a day. Mm-hmm. It was a slaughterhouse. And it was continued with even more technology like the splitting of the atom, harnessing nature to destroy 100,000 people in a flash. We could, for the first time in our life, destroy humanity. Mm-hmm. When that happens, and that technology and all that groundwork was laid before 1900, what happened was there was no fixed point of truth. So what happens then? Nietzsche says God is dead. What does that mean? Your Christian God is no good here, my friend. And what happens with human beings is they will create their own religion. And what happens? You come up with ideologies, which are sick religions like communism, like fascism. You understand? Mm-hmm. That's what happens. And all in the name of, well, we're moving on from religion. We are now going to embrace Nietzsche's ideology. We are now going to create a super race of human beings. Why? Because we can perfect humanity. Because we can create a utopia on earth. Because we can create heaven on earth. Now, to create heaven on earth, guys, we got to get rid of the fucking assholes over there. Okay? Those people they're corrupting the youth of Athens. And all of us suffer from it. I did it today. I've done it twice today on 2 podcasts. I have called for the death of the academics. I mean, not directly, but I'm guilty of this too. All of us fall. The founding fathers know that people I'm a good person. I really am. But boy, I fall into the same shit. I can be a murderer too. All of us can. And it's important to understand that in yourself. And I made an argument for you today on this podcast, and I was wrong, but you see what happens. If you don't have absolute truths, if you don't have truths with capital T's, which is what religion gives you, faith gives you, and I'm not a religious guy, you will find yourself being blown that which way, and it ain't good, because all of us, including me, believe that if I was emperor of the world, I would make everything great. I really would. True. And it would entail getting rid of or silencing the assholes over here. And I'd be wrong.
There's something else at play. You alluded to it earlier, and it's the tactic of manipulating language.
Wow.
Right? So if I can change the definition of things, if I can make things mean one thing that used to mean another thing, and yeah, people will typically combat that with, well, language evolves. Yes, organically, I agree it evolves, but it is not directly manipulated to try to make things into something they're not, like men into women, women into men, for example, but that's a tactic.
You can read Jacques Derrida for that. That comes from the binary, the idea, we got to wrap this up because Dylan's got to go. Are we good?
Okay, yeah.
But Jacques Derrida and Michel Foucault, the French Algerian asshole Derrida, another zero, who contributed nothing to the Western logos because, well, he considered the logos to be corrupt. The idea was that that human beings, when you speak in binary terms, male, female, hot, cold, yin, yang, you will always inherently favor one over the other. You'll favor one. You'll just naturally be prejudiced, in which, male over female. We just do that. If you live in a binary world, if you have categories, you're always going to favor one category or other. We're going to get rid of all prejudice. All prejudice is by getting rid of all categories. You can't have male, female. You can't even have, if you're going to write a philosophy, you should erase it with your left hand while you're doing it, because even to state that there's a truth or a position will create biases in your own brain. He's such a dick. He's such a piece of shit. He's a dude. Now, Derrida just grew up. He's a tiny little guy. He was Jewish in a Muslim country, Algeria. He never made the soccer team. And he grew up with terrible, terrible anti-Semitism. He was probably grew up so humiliated watching his parents. Probably feared for his life. They had to leave. They came to France. This is a very angry little man. So let's not take Derrida too seriously. But if you want to know who took that philosophy and applied it to the trans movement, it would be the gender Nazis. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Well, Brian, that went in a completely different direction than I thought.
I'm sorry, brother. We'll do it again.
But I love it.
We'll do it again.
I didn't expect this, but I'm glad it went this way. And let's do it again.
Anytime.
I imagine if we do it again, it's going to go in another completely different direction than I expected, which is all good. That's what I'm after.
Well, I appreciate you knowing so much.
I appreciate it, man.
I appreciate
I don't know if I do. I just interject occasionally to make people think I do.
I don't know, dude.
And then I just listen.
You know the names. It says a lot about you. And you've taken your time, and it means that you care.
Well, I appreciate
people like you who care. You have a lot of compassion, I can tell. And I know you do too, man.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
I like you guys, man. Anything you need, anytime, man.
Right on.
It's an
Likewise.
honor for me to do it.
Likewise.
And I'm sorry that I might have hijacked it, but it was fun to
It's
talk
all
about.
good. I was like, okay, my mind's blown. Like, I'm like, wait, what? Like,
what did you, before we go, what did you plan on talking about?
I usually don't. I used to come with plans.
Yeah.
And like when I started podcasting, I would literally have a list of like 10 questions. Yeah. And then somebody'd give me an answer. I'm like, cool. Hold on. No, don't elaborate. I got to get to my next question. And so I don't do that anymore.
You gave me a knife, dude. You threw me off.